Hello, we're back with the last function of the church in our little video series here of the functions of the church. We've talked about worship, teaching, evangelism, and service, and now finally we're getting to community or fellowship. If we are exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit, we will be other-centered because the Spirit is other-centered. The Spirit creates koinonia, that idea of fellowship or community within the body of Christ and among the believers. Adjust my screen here. There we go. So if we are exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit, we will be other-centered, and we are called to live and operate within genuine community. The Spirit is the creator of this community, and again, that is the idea of koinonia. This is something that is so hard to do because our natural tendency as human beings is to be self-centered. We are very good at being self-centered. We don't need anyone to teach us. We can do that very much fine all on our own. Thank you very much. But we are called to not be self-centered. We are called to be other-centered. And just to show that that is true, within the Bible there are 31 specific, what I call one another commands. Love one another, serve one another. 31 of them. So the idea of reflecting the essence of the Godhead and living an other-centered life is extremely important. Remember, the Father is not all about himself. The Father loves the Son and the Spirit. The Son is not all about himself. He reveals and glorifies the Father and participates in that in the Spirit. So we do not have a God who is ultimately self-centered. We have a God, even in himself, who is ultimately other-centered. And so to live in his image and to be who he is, to being, especially as Christians, being conformed to the image of Christ, we are called to be other-centered as he is other-centered and live in community as he lives in community with himself. We understand that community is good. We want it, but we have a hard time getting to it. We understand that people are more caught than taught, but how do we make this happen? Where does this fellowship occur? Well, organically, they develop in relationships that develop within and with an eye toward the church. Also, this fellowship occurs organizationally. Community can be fostered within intentional small groups, small meetings within the structure of the church, such as Sunday school classes or outside small groups. These can occur organizationally as well as organically, and both of them, as long as they are working toward that other-centered goal, are great. Both of them work well. Sometimes it's harder for the organic relationships to develop. Sometimes a little organizational push can help, but there are barriers against this idea of koinonia, against this idea of community, even though it is Spirit empowered and we are all Spirit indwelt. What are some of these barriers? Number one is the remnant of sin. Some people don't want a fellowship because of the fear of others, past pain or rejection, or just maybe they may be aloof or shy. These are real barriers to fellowship, and I don't want to pass this over lightly. One of the things is fear of others, and fear of others usually comes from hurt by others, and that's one of the things that makes the Christian community difficult. In varying degrees, we're all broken vessels. We are all in need of fixing, not from one another, but fixing from God, fixing the damage, healing the hurts, taking away the pain. And sometimes it is very hard for people who have been violated in one way or another, whether a trust has been violated or they've been abused or whatever. It's very hard for people to become trusting again. The old adage, once bitten, twice shy, really hits home here. But it is a barrier. And the barrier is, at least has its beginnings in sin. If not the person's sin, then someone else's that was done to them. But we are called to be in community, and we must make every effort to make that happen. Now, we must realize that community is not an overnight experience. It doesn't happen all at once. It may take many, many, many years of intentional goodwill for the facilitation of that community. And it's a hard working process. And churches that think that they can artificially create it in a few months are really fooling themselves. Real community takes time because it takes trust, and it takes that build up over numbers of interactions. Some churches do not promote fellowship by not emphasizing these small groups and emphasizing their participation. Now, I'm not here just talking about outside church hours small groups. I'm talking about Sunday school. I'm talking about anything that breaks the church down into more manageable relational groups. And some churches just do not emphasize that. They either don't have it all together, or if they do have it, it's an add-on and not something that is integral to who that church is. Finally, another barrier to fellowship is just the spirit of the age. Americans are consumeristic and individualistic. Getting into the hearts and lives of others is messy business. I might not want somebody in my business that close, but to be a Christian, I must let them in. I think that's one thing that we tend to overlook. If we are going to be authentic and we're going to want people to love and care for us, then we've got to get inside of them. And to get inside of them, we've got to open ourselves up to the bear. And we may wind up getting hurt by it. That's the chance we take. If we cannot stand the possibility of being wounded, we'll never open ourselves up to the possibility of being loved either. And that's one of the difficult things with our culture, is in order to have that community, one must be vulnerable. And folks just don't want to be vulnerable. But you can't avoid it. It's like that first date. You got to take the chance and ask. And that ask might be rejection. She might say, no way, not in a million years. Or he, depending. But we must be vulnerable in order to reap the benefits of such love. Being in true Christian fellowship requires an attitude of other-centeredness that is sometimes difficult to muster. Being other-centered does not come naturally to us. Being self-centered does. We want what we want, and we don't necessarily want what others want quite as badly. And it's difficult to live in that type of environment where we are constantly being other-centered. It's difficult, and it's very, very hard for us to be able to manage through that. That's why ultimately it is the Spirit who is the creator of community. He is the Lord and giver of life. And we don't always have to rely on our own skills and our own abilities to live in this type of community. He creates it. Historically, the positives and negatives of true fellowship have been and always will be present in the communities of faith. What we've just discussed is nothing new. It's just that we are rediscovering the issues. And the church must continue to follow the leading of the Spirit to help overcome the weaknesses and accentuate the positives of such Spirit-led fellowship. Again, when I'm talking fellowship, I'm not necessarily talking about a potluck dinner. I'm talking about koinonia, the fellowship with Christ and each other as we share in each other's lives. That mutual indwelling that Christ and we share is replicated in mutual indwelling and activity in the lives of one another. The perichoresis of salvation is extended to the perichoresis of the church, that we live in and among and within each other, and that we are indwelling and actively participating in each other's lives as Christ in the Spirit is doing in ours. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about fellowship. It is a very deep and very beautiful thing. Well, that's the 5 functions of the church: worship, teaching, evangelism, service, and fellowship. We're going to shift gears here with the church and begin to talk about church leadership, and as we begin to wind down our discussion of the church as a whole. So stick with us. We're almost there. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.